Beyond Gruel. Former prisoners review the world's most luxurious prison meals. The plate that shocked a prisoner. The first time Marcus Lane saw a salmon fillet served on a white ceramic plate inside a prison, he thought it was a prank. He'd just arrived at Norway's Halden Prison, transferred there under an international rehabilitation exchange program. The room was bright, clean, filled with the smell of garlic and butter. A correctional officer, not a guard, but a man wearing a gray polo shirt and a quiet smile, set down the meal: seared salmon, boiled potatoes, and a side of vegetables that looked like they belonged in a restaurant, not a cell block. Marcus had served 8 years in Illinois for armed robbery. Back home, meals came in plastic trays, gray as concrete, ladled by indifferent hands. Sometimes the rice was cold. Sometimes the bread was moldy. And sometimes, when the kitchen ran out of food, lunch was nothing more than a slice of bologna folded between dry bread. Now he sat in what looked like a college cafeteria, hearing laughter, the clink of utensils, and smelled something that reminded him of life before prison. He stared at the plate for a full minute before whispering, "This can't be real." A world apart. For most Americans, the phrase prison food conjures the same image: gruel. A lump of beige protein paste, maybe a scoop of beans, maybe nothing identifiable. In the United States, meals inside correctional institutions cost an average of $2.41 per inmate per day, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2024. Across the Atlantic, that same figure is multiplied. In Norway, Sweden, and Finland, governments invest 5 to 6 times more in daily inmate nutrition. To Marcus, this was incomprehensible. "How can a guy locked up for murder eat better than my family did on the outside?" he once asked, shaking his head during a 2025 interview for the Global Correctional Review. The answer, as researchers explained, is philosophical, not financial. Where America's penal code prioritizes punishment, many European nations design incarceration around reintegration. Food, in that philosophy, is part of therapy. The prison restaurant you've never heard of. In southern Denmark, a facility called the State Prison of East Jutland runs a fully functional restaurant inside its walls. It's called Café Hope. The customers? Visiting civilians and staff. The cooks? Inmates serving sentences for offenses ranging from theft to homicide. Every week, prisoners there prepare multi-course meals: roasted lamb with red wine sauce, baked fish with fresh herbs, and desserts that could appear on the cover of a culinary magazine. Diners pay full restaurant prices, the profits fund vocational training, and inmates earn certificates recognized by Denmark's hospitality industry. A 2024 report by the European Justice Observatory documented that inmates who completed this culinary program had recidivism rates below 15%, one of the lowest in Europe. "Feeding people well doesn't excuse their crimes," said program director Lars Jensen. "It teaches them to live differently when they get out." Marcus couldn't believe what he saw when he visited the Danish model during his rehabilitation tour. Back home, food was punishment. Here, it's education, he said. Austria's Leoben Justice Center, a hotel for the guilty. If Halden looks like a university, Austria's Leoben Justice Center looks like a boutique hotel. Designed by renowned architect Joseph Hohenschin, it features glass walls, landscaped courtyards, and open kitchens stocked with olive oil, fresh produce, and modern stoves. Critics call it soft justice. Supporters call it civilization. Each inmate has access to a communal kitchen and dining area, where they prepare their own meals from ingredients purchased with prison wages. The Austrian Federal Ministry of Justice confirmed in its 2023 annual report that every inmate receives a €60 monthly food allowance, enough to buy healthy groceries, plan menus, and cook 3 meals daily. A former inmate interviewed by Der Standard summarized it simply: "They didn't give us freedom. They gave us responsibility, and that was harder." Japan, luxury and discipline. On the other side of the world, Japan's prison meals are not luxurious by Western standards, but by inmate standards, they are among the world's most balanced. According to the Japanese Ministry of Justice, 2023, every meal is designed by a professional dietitian, totaling 2,600 calories per day, with near-perfect nutritional ratios. Menus include rice, grilled fish, pickled vegetables, and miso soup. Dessert is rare, but tea is standard. The meals are eaten in silence, under the supervision of officers who sit among inmates, not above them. There are no maggots, no mystery meats, no expired milk, and no discretion. Each serving must look identical, reinforcing equality, order, and self-control. It's not luxury, wrote journalist Hiroshi Sato in Asahi Weekly, but it's dignity, served on time, every day, without fail. For Japanese prisons, precision itself is compassion. Sweden's modern cafeterias. Sweden's correctional model mirrors its social policies, standardized quality, minimal cruelty. In Salberga prison, inmates dine in cafeterias resembling corporate canteens, clean trays, fresh salad bars, and hot meals prepared by rotating kitchen teams. According to the Swedish Correctional Service, 2024, daily menus often include meatballs with lingonberry sauce, pasta bolognese, or fish with potatoes. Coffee is served after lunch. An internal study showed that since improving food quality in 2018, the prison reported a 25% drop in disciplinary incidents and fewer staff injuries. The warden put it bluntly. Hungry men make trouble. Fed men think. When food becomes policy. What outsiders rarely understand is that these luxurious meals are not indulgences, they are strategy. European criminologists use the term nutritional rehabilitation. The concept, teach prisoners how to live like citizens by letting them eat like citizens. A 2023 Cambridge Institute of Criminology study compared recidivism rates between punitive and rehabilitative systems. In countries that maintained humane meal programs, Norway, Finland, Denmark, reoffending dropped below 20%. In punitive systems, US, UK, South Africa, it remained above 60%. Nutrition, the study argued, was not the only factor, but it was a telling one. As one researcher said, food is the first language of dignity. When you change how a man eats, you begin changing how he behaves. America's reality check. For Marcus, returning to the United States was jarring. He remembered standing in a federal cafeteria line where trays slid across steel counters like assembly parts. A spoonful of beans, a slice of bread, and maybe a piece of fruit if the shipment hadn't spoiled. The Southern Center for Human Rights, 2023, described food in U.S. prisons as a health crisis disguised as discipline. Malnutrition and obesity coexist, too many empty calories, too little protein. Inmates develop diabetes, hypertension, and vitamin deficiencies before they're 40. Private contractors like Aramark and Trinity Services Group, which feed thousands of inmates nationwide, have been fined repeatedly for serving spoiled or undercooked food. In Michigan, a 2022 inspection found maggots in kitchen areas. In Ohio, guards reported serving sandwiches with expired meat. Still, the contracts continued, because they were cheap. The cheaper the food, the bigger the profit, said civil rights attorney Jessica Stern. And prisoners can't complain to Yelp. Luxury by comparison. When The Guardian released its 2024 exposé, How Prisoners Eat Around the World, viewers were stunned. Images showed salmon and salad in Norway, sushi rice bowls in Japan, next to images of U.S. disciplinary loaves and brown mystery stews. The contrast went viral. Hashtags like #PrisonFoodChallenge trended briefly on TikTok, where users recreated real prison meals from different countries, from Finland's omelets to Louisiana's grits. It was entertainment for some, outrage for others. Marcus, watching from Chicago, said in an interview. They call it luxury, but it's not about flavor. It's about fairness. He paused before adding, they think giving a man real food makes him soft. I say it makes him human again. The price of humanity. Critics argue that good prison meals send the wrong message, that criminals don't deserve comfort. But defenders point to hard data. Humane systems save money long-term by reducing reoffense rates and healthcare costs. The Finnish Ministry of Justice, 2023. Calculated that each ex-inmate who avoids reoffending saves the state roughly €1.2 million over a decade. Feeding someone properly is cheaper than catching them again. Halden's warden, R. Hoydal, told BBC News in 2024. You can punish the crime without destroying the person. Hunger teaches nothing except hate. In that one sentence lies the heart of the debate. Inside the taste of freedom. On his final day in Norway, Marcus sat down with other inmates, men from countries he'd only read about, and shared a simple lunch, vegetable soup, rye bread, and coffee. He said it was the best meal of his life. Not because of the taste, but because of what it represented: calm, normalcy, respect. When he got out, he promised himself he'd never eat fast food again. I used to think food in prison should be terrible, he said. Then I learned that bad food just makes worse people. The unequal table. Today, global prison food mirrors global inequality. In one hemisphere, prisoners dine at wooden tables with ceramic plates and talk about rehabilitation. In another, they eat on metal trays under fluorescent lights, praying not to find insects in the rice. Both call it justice. But when you compare what's on the plates, only one side seems to believe that reform is possible. Inside the gourmet cell, how luxury became a tool for reform. When Marcus Lane walked through the kitchen block of Norway's Halden Prison, he thought he'd taken a wrong turn. Stainless steel counters gleamed under skylights. There was no shouting, no clatter of trays, just the rhythm of knives on cutting boards, the hiss of onions meeting hot oil, the murmur of men discussing seasoning instead of survival. A sign on the wall read, "Respect through responsibility." For Marcus, who'd survived 8 years in Illinois on cold beans and powdered potatoes, the idea that prisoners were allowed, even trusted, to cook with real ingredients felt surreal. He wasn't alone. Around the world, ex-inmates who had eaten in both American and Scandinavian prisons described the difference as night and day. But beneath the shock lay a deeper question: why would a country feed its criminals better than many of its citizens? The philosophy of food as reform. In most Western nations, food inside prisons is not just about sustenance, it's a social contract. The Nordic model of corrections, followed in Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, is rooted in a simple principle: you lose your freedom, not your dignity. That belief extends all the way to the dining table. Inmates cook their own meals. They shop for ingredients. They sit at tables with guards, not separated, not watched, but equal participants in daily life. Food is the great equalizer, said criminologist Helena Grostad in a 2024 BBC News interview. If you can share a meal, you can share responsibility. At Halden, food became part of rehabilitation therapy. Prison psychologists observed that shared cooking sessions lowered aggression, improved mental health, and fostered cooperation between rival inmates. The idea was not indulgence, it was exposure. Many inmates had never eaten healthy food consistently in their lives. Teaching them how to cook, plan, and budget was teaching them how to function in society. Finland's culinary freedom. If Norway invented rehabilitation through food, Finland perfected it. The country's open prisons, such as Kirstenmäki and Suomenlinna, function almost like small villages. There are no walls, no cells, and no guards standing over you, just accountability. Inmates wake early, go to work or school, shop for groceries, and cook for themselves. The Finnish Ministry of Justice, 2024, reports that prisoners are given stipends equivalent to about €70 per week for food. Meals are prepared communally in cottages: fish soup, potatoes, rye bread, or pancakes. Former inmate Rami Jarvanen, interviewed by Yle News, said, "It wasn't about luxury. It was about normal life. You forget you're a prisoner, and that's the point." Finland's system boasts a recidivism rate of around 20%, among the lowest in the world. Officials credit structured nutrition as one small but consistent reason. Balanced meals build physical stability, and stability builds behavior. Culinary rehabilitation in France. Across the Baltic, France embraced a more artistic version of the idea. In prisons like La Santé and Nanterre, culinary training is a pathway to employment. Under the National Restauration et Reinsertion Initiative, inmates train under professional chefs, learning not only how to cook but how to run kitchens, time management, hygiene, budgeting, and teamwork. The results are remarkable. According to the French Ministry of Justice, 2023, over 60% of graduates from these programs find jobs within 6 months of release. Some even open restaurants. One such graduate, who preferred to be identified only as Thierry, told Le Monde, "Cooking saved me. It gave me a way to make people happy instead of hurt." For Thierry, the first time he served a customer, a guard, ironically, was the first time he felt human again. Austria's glass kitchen. In Austria's Leoben Justice Center, the concept of dignity reaches architectural extremes. The prison, all glass walls, wood interiors, and natural light, looks like a corporate office. Critics deride it as luxury incarceration. But those who have visited know the truth: comfort is part of control. Inmates shop, cook, and eat within shared kitchen pods, their behavior monitored not through punishment but through trust. Each prisoner gets a €60 monthly food allowance, buying ingredients from an internal commissary stocked with vegetables, pasta, and dairy. Austrian prison reformer Joseph Hohenschin, the facility's architect, once said in an interview, "If you treat people like humans, they begin to behave like humans. It's not softness, it's science." His philosophy is backed by data. Austria's recidivism rate hovers around 26%, compared to over 60% in the US. The Japanese paradox. Then there's Japan, the model of strict order that somehow still manages to provide balanced, healthy meals. In Fuchu prison, one of Asia's largest, the food is plain but spotless. Meals are planned down to the calorie, averaging 2,600 calories per day, with strict nutritional balance: rice, fish, soup, vegetables, and tea. There's no salt beyond the prescribed limit, no second helpings, and no indulgence. Prisoners eat facing forward in silence, hands on laps between bites. Guards dine in identical portions nearby. Former detainees described it as bland but fair. To outsiders, it may seem robotic. But to those who've endured chaos, the predictability is its own mercy. It's not meant to comfort, wrote Hiroshi Sato in Asahi Weekly, 2024. It's meant to normalize. Every meal says, you are still part of a system that works. Sweden's cafeteria system. Sweden occupies the middle ground, structured, modest, but humane. At Salberga prison, inmates eat meals prepared in industrial kitchens staffed by trained prisoners. Menus rotate weekly: meatballs, pasta, fish, salads, and fruit. Breakfast includes porridge, bread, and coffee, small, consistent routines that reinforce order. A 2023 Swedish prison service study noted a 25% decline in aggression after expanding menu diversity and allowing inmates to choose from limited options. Choice, even in small doses, gave inmates a sense of autonomy, a psychological tool often more effective than isolation. People underestimate how powerful a plate of warm food can be, said Warden Lars Holmgren. It resets your brain. America's stark contrast. For Marcus, the differences were painful to confront. He'd eaten in facilities across Illinois, Georgia, and Florida, where breakfast often consisted of dry oatmeal and watery milk. Lunch. Cold bologna sandwiches. Dinner. Something called chili mac, served lukewarm, the sauce tasting more like salt than meat. According to a 2023 Southern Center for Human Rights report, many U.S. prisons spend less on an inmate's meal than an average high school does on cafeteria lunch. Food shortages, outsourcing, and expired stock have led to recurring lawsuits against companies like Aramark and Trinity Services Group. In Michigan alone, Aramark was fined over $270,000 for health violations in 2022. But the contracts persist, not because they work, but because they're cheap. You can't rehabilitate someone on $2 of beans, Marcus said flatly. All it does is remind you you're worth less than the tray they serve it on. The psychology of eating behind bars. Psychologists call it nutritional environment therapy. The premise is simple. How an inmate eats shapes how an inmate thinks. In 2024, researchers at the University of Helsinki and Cambridge Institute of Criminology found a measurable correlation between food quality and behavioral stability. Prisons that offered structured, balanced meals saw lower rates of violence, suicide, and relapse into drug abuse. Those with poor diets saw the opposite: more riots, more depression, more medical crises. Bad food breeds resentment, said criminologist Dr. Brian Arvidsson. It reinforces hopelessness. Once you fix the plate, you start fixing the person. That theory has reshaped European corrections, but remains controversial in the US, where critics see it as coddling criminals. The economics of compassion. Ironically, humane meals save money. A 2024 European Justice Observatory review estimated that for every €1 invested in prison nutrition, European countries save €4 in healthcare, security, and reoffending costs. Feeding people properly reduces violence. Reduced violence means fewer hospital visits and fewer staff injuries. Better nutrition also cuts long-term medical costs. Diabetes, obesity, and malnutrition drain millions from state healthcare budgets annually. You don't have to be kind, said a Swedish official quoted in The Guardian, 2024. Just smart. A meal worth remembering. When Marcus was invited to help in Halden's kitchen, he expected suspicion. Instead, the head chef, an inmate named Kiel, handed him an apron and said, "Start with the garlic." They were cooking salmon with lemon butter, roasted potatoes, and vegetables. It wasn't a feast, just food made with care. Marcus peeled, chopped, stirred, and for the first time in years, forgot where he was. That night, when everyone sat down together, inmates and staff, no guards with guns, no shouting, he realized something he'd never felt in an American prison: peace. He later said, "It wasn't the meal that changed me. It was the trust. Nobody gave me that before." The Quiet Revolution. Across Europe, similar kitchens are transforming prisons. In the Netherlands, inmates run food trucks that serve the public. In Denmark, Café Hope has become a model of reintegration through gastronomy. Even in the UK, the Clink charity runs restaurants inside prisons, staffed entirely by inmates earning professional certifications. Their message is universal: rehabilitation starts not with punishment, but participation. One Danish official put it simply: "If you can cook, you can plan. If you can plan, you can live." Luxury or logic? When photos of Halden and Leoben went viral in 2024, outrage erupted online. Commenters accused Europe of spoiling criminals. But former inmates and experts defended the system, pointing out that humane food isn't luxury, it's logic. Marcus addressed the controversy during a prison reform forum in 2025. Luxury is choice. In there, we didn't get steak or wine. We got routine, decency, and something to look forward to. That's not luxury. That's how you rebuild people. The data backs him up. Countries that feed to reform have fewer repeat offenders and lower incarceration rates overall. Those that feed to punish keep their prisons full and their problems permanent. From cafeterias to caviar, ranking the world's most luxurious prison meals. When a nation decides how to feed its prisoners, it reveals more than a budget line, it exposes its soul. To some, a prison tray should represent punishment. To others, it's a chance for redemption. And in a handful of countries, it has become something else entirely, an unexpected symbol of civilization. This chapter dives into the world's most surprising correctional kitchens, from sushi-grade fish in Norway to handmade pasta in Italy, to uncover where justice meets gastronomy, and where luxury behind bars is simply another word for progress. 10. The United States: survival, not luxury. Let's start with the benchmark for contrast. In the U.S., a typical prison meal costs less than a cup of coffee, $2.41 per inmate per day, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2024. A menu in Alabama might read, soy patty, white rice, and cornbread. In Louisiana, it's powdered potatoes and watery chili. In Texas, some inmates still face disciplinary loaf, a dense, flavorless block of blended food used as punishment. A Marshall Project, 2023, survey found that over 80% of U.S. inmates rated their meals as poor or inedible. Luxury isn't even a concept. Survival is. Yet in other corners of the world, prison kitchens tell a completely different story. 9. Japan: the discipline of perfection. At first glance, Japan's meals don't look luxurious. But step closer and you'll see precision worthy of a Michelin kitchen. Every tray is a lesson in balance: rice, grilled fish, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and tea. Calories and nutrients are meticulously calculated by dietitians from the Japanese Ministry of Justice, ensuring exactly 2,600 calories per day. Inmates eat in silence, facing forward, meals served at precise times, no chaos, no waste. Cleanliness and uniformity are sacred. The taste was plain, one former inmate told NHK World, 2023, but it was always fresh and never made you sick. That's a kind of luxury too. In a world of overcrowded, underfunded systems, consistency itself feels extravagant. 8. Sweden: cafeteria-style calm. At Salberga Prison, Sweden's largest high-security facility, the dining hall resembles a corporate canteen. Inmates line up for hot plates of pasta, meatballs, fish, and salads prepared daily by trained cooks, often prisoners themselves. Coffee is served after meals, and guards eat the same food, sitting only a few tables away. A 2023 report by the Swedish Correctional Service found that since expanding menu variety, inmate aggression dropped by 25%. One prisoner told the local, Sweden. It's not fancy. But when you get a plate that smells good, you remember what normal life feels like. Luxury here isn't flavor, it's peace. 7. Germany, simple, solid, civilized. German prisons don't aim to impress, but they refuse to degrade. At Hanover Prison, the day begins with rye bread, jam, and coffee. Lunch might include lentil stew or sausage with sauerkraut. Dinner. A cold platter of cheese, ham, and fruit. Every meal is prepared to the same nutritional standards used by the German army, not opulent, but methodical. According to the Federal Ministry of Justice, 2024, each inmate consumes about 2,800 calories daily, with fresh vegetables served at least 5 times per week. Inmates may request alternative menus for religious or health reasons. Denial is rare. As one ex-prisoner said, "They don't feed you to make you happy. They feed you to keep your humanity intact." 6. France, gastronomy as rehabilitation. If any country could make incarceration culinary, it's France. At Maison d'Arrêt de Nanterre, inmates receive baguettes, fruit, and cheese daily. Main dishes include stews, roast chicken, and vegetable gratin, all made in-house. The French Ministry of Justice, 2023, spends roughly €7 per inmate per day on food, nearly triple the US average. And in partnership with Michelin-level chefs, prisons like La Santé and Fleury-Mérogis run professional culinary training programs. A former participant told Le Monde, "It's not just cooking, it's identity. I started tasting again, and that meant I was alive again." The French see good food not as indulgence, but as obligation, the same philosophy that defines their entire culture. 5. Denmark. Dinner with dignity. In Denmark's state prison of East Jutland, there are no metal trays, only plates. Every housing unit has its own kitchen, equipped with stoves, fridges, and cookware. Inmates receive food stipends, shop weekly, and plan meals collectively. Menus range from stews and pasta to grilled meats and fresh salads. Guards often join the table. The European Justice Observatory, 2024, reported a 40% drop in disciplinary incidents since the introduction of inmate cooking programs. The logic is simple: when people share a meal, they share respect. To call it luxury is to misunderstand it. It's structure disguised as kindness. 4. Austria, the architectural appetite. At first glance, Leoben Justice Center could pass for a modern university campus: sleek glass, open spaces, natural light. Inside, each inmate has a private room, access to a shared kitchen, and a monthly €60 food allowance. They cook their own meals, omelets, pasta, schnitzel, and eat at wooden tables under hanging lamps. Designed by architect Joseph Hohenschin, the facility's philosophy is revolutionary: beauty itself rehabilitates. When surroundings are civilized, Hohenschin said, behavior becomes civilized too. The prison's motto, printed in the lobby, reads, "All humans are born free and equal, even those who have lost their freedom." Here, luxury is not the food, but the atmosphere, the quiet refusal to dehumanize. 3. Finland, the open kitchen revolution. Finland's Suomenlinna open prison sits on a small island surrounded by the Baltic Sea. There are no fences, no guards with guns, only trust. Inmates live in shared cottages, cook their own meals, and walk to work or school on the mainland. The Finnish Ministry of Justice, 2024, provides weekly grocery budgets averaging €70 per inmate, allowing for fresh produce, dairy, and fish. Breakfast is self-prepared: porridge, berries, coffee. Lunch and dinner rotate: salmon soup, reindeer stew, or pasta with cream sauce. To outsiders, it sounds absurdly soft. To Finland, it's common sense. "You can't teach freedom through captivity," said Warden Anja Karjalainen in a 2024 EEL News interview. "You teach it through choice." That freedom has measurable results. Finland's reoffending rate is among the world's lowest, just 20%. 2. Norway, Halden Prison, the 5-star of reform. Norway's Halden Prison has become almost mythic, dubbed the world's most humane prison by Time and BBC News. But beyond its forest setting and clean architecture lies a culinary philosophy unlike any other. Every unit has its own kitchen. Inmates shop with digital budgets, cook together, and sit down with staff for shared meals. Menus include salmon, pasta, vegetables, fresh bread, and coffee. No uniforms. No shouting. No plastic trays. As one ex-inmate, Jonas Halvorsen, told The Guardian, 2024. They fed us like citizens, not animals. And somehow, we started acting like citizens again. It's not luxury, it's logic, sharpened by empathy. 1. Italy, cooking as redemption. Italy's prisons combine Catholic compassion with Mediterranean passion, and food is the bridge. At Bollate prison in Milan, inmates run a restaurant called InGalera, in jail. The menu: burrata, risotto, tiramisu. The customers: the public. The kitchen is staffed entirely by inmates under professional supervision, serving diners from the city. Profits go toward rehabilitation programs and family support funds. Since opening in 2015, InGalera has been featured in the New York Times, La Repubblica, and CNN for redefining what reform can taste like. The restaurant averages 4.5 stars on TripAdvisor. Inmate chef Luca told La Repubblica, "We used to destroy things. Now we create. That's real punishment, having to build what you once broke." Among all global examples, Italy's model combines discipline, pride, and artistry, a culinary justice that feeds both body and conscience. The global ranking, from Gruel to gourmet. Rank. Country. Style. Average daily food budget. Defining feature. 1. Italy. Culinary rehabilitation. €8.50. Public restaurant run by inmates. 2. Norway. Nordic reform. $75 weekly budget. Shared meals with staff. 3. Finland. Open prison system. €70 weekly stipend. Freedom through responsibility. 4. Austria. Architectural reform. €60 monthly allowance. Communal glass kitchens. 5. Denmark. Democratic dining. €65 weekly stipend. Collective meal planning. 6. France. Vocational culinary training. €7 daily. Chef-led inmate programs. 7. Germany. Structured nutrition. €6 daily. Military-grade rations. 8. Sweden. Cafeteria reform. €5 daily. Reduced aggression rates. 9. Japan. Nutritional discipline. €400 per meal. Perfect balance, zero waste. 10. USA. Punitive minimalism. $2.41 daily. Cheapest, least humane. What luxury really means. When outsiders see these menus, they call it luxury. But ask the inmates, and they'll tell you it's something simpler: normalcy. Marcus summed it up best after visiting Halden and Finland's open prisons. Luxury isn't steak. It's peace. It's eating without fear. The paradox of punishment is that cruelty doesn't cure crime, it feeds it. Every nation that learned this lesson through food discovered the same truth. When you nourish a person's body, you begin to heal their soul. The final course: how food became the measure of justice. When Marcus Lane finally left Norway, he didn't take much with him: a few books, a pair of shoes, and a photo of the last meal he cooked inside Halden Prison: seared chicken with rosemary, roasted potatoes, and a simple salad. He framed that photo later, not because of the food itself, but because of what it meant. It was proof that he had lived like a human being again, even while serving time for a crime that once stripped him of that right. Across the world, his story echoes in the quiet corners of cafeterias, kitchens, and open dining halls, where the act of eating, so ordinary outside prison walls, has become one of the most revolutionary tools of justice reform. The taste of humanity. To understand why prison food matters, you have to understand what it replaces. For decades, in many nations, food behind bars was designed not to nourish but to remind, a daily message of worthlessness. In the US, British, and South African systems, meals were intentionally bland and repetitive. Variety was a privilege. Flavor was indulgence. And hunger, even mild, persistent hunger, was part of the punishment. But as criminologists began to study what actually works in reducing crime, one truth kept surfacing: deprivation breeds defiance. Starving a man of dignity doesn't make him moral, said Dr. Helena Grostad of the University of Oslo in her 2024 paper Rehabilitation Through Routine. It just teaches him resentment. This understanding has slowly reshaped correctional philosophies across the globe, from hard discipline toward structured humanity. The turning point, when food reform started. The shift began quietly in the 1990s, after decades of data showed punitive prisons weren't making society safer. Norway, Finland, and Denmark led the way, abolishing bread and water punishments, upgrading kitchens, and hiring professional chefs to design meal plans. In 1998, the Nordic Prison Reform Act declared food a core component of correctional dignity. That same year, the U.S. was privatizing prison kitchens. 2 decades later, the results speak loudly. According to the Cambridge Institute of Criminology, 2024, nations that treat nutrition as rehabilitation have reoffending rates below 25%, while those that treat it as punishment remain near 70%. Food became the quiet revolution, less visible than court reform or police oversight, but arguably just as transformative. Inside the mind of reform. Psychologists studying prison environments refer to meals as micro-restorations, short moments where structure, predictability, and small pleasures stabilize mental health. At Finland's Kirstenmäki Open Prison, inmates cook their own breakfast, eat at family-style tables, and wash their dishes. These routines mimic civilian life. Over time, the brain begins to associate normal behavior with reward instead of resistance. Warden Anja Karjalainen, interviewed by EEL News, 2024, said, "Most of our inmates never had a normal home. A shared breakfast can teach more responsibility than 1,000 lectures." In contrast, American psychologists studying U.S. Supermax facilities, where inmates eat alone in their cells, found that isolation and poor diet contributed to depression, impulsivity, and aggression. Nutrition, they concluded, is not neutral. It's psychological fuel. The economics of decency. Critics often scoff at the cost of good prison meals, but the numbers tell a different story. A 2024 European Justice Observatory analysis found that feeding inmates properly reduces long-term state spending by up to 60%, mostly through lower healthcare costs and fewer reoffenses. Finland, for example, spends about €70 weekly per inmate on food, roughly $10 a day. The US average? Less than $3. Yet Finland's prison population continues to shrink, while America's remains among the world's largest. Decency is cheaper than cruelty, said criminologist Dr. Brian Arvidsson. But cruelty sells better in politics. He wasn't wrong. For years, politicians in punitive systems treated tough prison conditions as proof of moral strength. What they ignored was evidence and economics, showing that better-fed, better-treated inmates rarely come back. When luxury becomes lesson. To outsiders, luxury prisons are an easy target. Viral headlines showing Norway's cozy kitchens or Austria's glass-walled cells often spark outrage online. Why should killers eat better than taxpayers, people ask. But step inside one of those dining halls, and the illusion fades. There are no feasts. No wine. No indulgence. Only structure, discipline, and accountability, values missing from the chaos that led many inmates there in the first place. Marcus described it this way. Back home, every meal felt like survival. In Norway, it felt like preparation, like they were getting me ready to live again. That difference, psychologists argue, is the line between punishment and prevention. In prisons where meals resemble war rations, inmates stay angry. In prisons where meals resemble family dinners, they start remembering what life outside feels like. The symbolism of the plate. Food is more than calories, it's cultural memory. In every society, eating together defines belonging. Families bond over meals. Soldiers share rations. Lovers meet at restaurants. Prison, by design, strips that away. It isolates, divides, and depersonalizes. That's why sharing a meal, even a simple one, is revolutionary inside. At Halden Prison, guards and inmates eat side by side, no guns, no barriers. At Italy's Bollate Prison, inmates serve paying customers at the restaurant InGalera. At Denmark's Café Hope, prisoners cook for civilians, not just for themselves. Each of these projects reintroduces what crime destroyed: trust. "It's not the food that changes them," said Italian warden Francesca Di Lorenzo. "It's the table." The critics and the culture war. Despite the data, humane prison food remains controversial. In the United States, public outrage against coddling criminals still drives policy. Talk radio hosts mock images of inmates eating salmon. Political ads warn against soft justice. Even within Europe, populist parties occasionally push back. In 2023, Austria's far-right opposition tried to defund the Leoben model, calling it an insult to victims. The motion failed, barely, after a parliamentary inquiry showed the program's 30% lower reoffending rate saved millions in taxpayer money. Still, the debate persists. Should justice look harsh, or should it work? For Marcus, who's seen both sides, the answer is clear. If your goal is revenge, starve them. If your goal is peace, feed them. The forgotten ones. Not every country embraces reform. Across Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia, prison kitchens remain scenes of horror. In Venezuela's Tocaron prison, meals depend on gangs controlling the food supply. In Nigeria's Kirikiri Maximum, inmates reportedly survive on corn paste and salt. Human Rights Watch reports thousands suffering from severe malnutrition in overcrowded facilities from Manila to Nairobi. The global divide is staggering, a world where one inmate learns to cook crème brûlée while another starves for days. Prison food is a mirror, said journalist Sofia Hernandez in El País, 2024. And what it reflects is inequality, not justice. The new generation of reformers. Change, however, is spreading. Even in the United States, reform pilot programs have begun experimenting with nutrition-based rehabilitation. In 2025, Colorado's Correctional Wellness Initiative introduced inmate-run kitchens using farm-to-table produce from nearby community farms. Early data shows declines in inmate violence and healthcare costs. Meanwhile, in Canada, a partnership between Correctional Service Canada and culinary colleges trains inmates for food service jobs post-release, inspired directly by Europe's models. Across continents, food has quietly become the new frontline of humane justice. The last meal. In every country, one ritual defines the intersection of morality and punishment: the final meal before execution. Once symbolic of mercy, it has become a subject of politics and debate. In 2011, Texas abolished the tradition after a condemned inmate mocked the privilege. In Japan, it continues, simple, dignified, and private. In some Scandinavian systems, it's obsolete, because executions themselves no longer exist. The contrast speaks volumes. Some nations still measure justice in suffering, others in progress. As Marcus once put it, you can tell what a country believes in by what it feeds its prisoners. Some serve bitterness. Others serve forgiveness. A new definition of luxury. The truth is, luxury in prison isn't about wealth, it's about intent. It's not truffle oil or steak, it's a system choosing to rebuild rather than destroy. It's giving a man a knife to chop vegetables instead of to harm. It's a country believing that even its worst citizens deserve a second course in life. Every study, every testimony, every reform proves the same principle: cruelty doesn't heal. Dignity does. The future of justice might not begin in the courtroom, it might begin in the kitchen. Epilogue: Marcus's table. Marcus now works as a culinary instructor for at-risk youth in Chicago. He teaches them how to cook on a budget, plan meals, and respect food. On the wall of his small training kitchen hangs that same photo, the last prison meal he ever made. Sometimes, when his students ask why he keeps it, he just smiles. Because that's where I stopped being a prisoner, he says, and started being a person again. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. Sources: Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2024, European Justice Observatory, 2024, BBC News, 2024, EEL News, 2024, The Guardian, 2024, Cambridge Institute of Criminology, 2024, Southern Center for Human Rights, 2023, El País, 2024, Human Rights Watch, 2023, Federal Ministry of Justice of Germany, 2024.